Good afternoon, welcome to SHOWstudio. Today it's a good day because I have the student panel. And we chose to discuss with the student Noir Kei Ninomiya. Ninomiya? I know that's going to be a hard one. Anyway, because I think it's a designer that should be studied in university and should be discussed and known by the student, even if it's not completely a new designer, but newly known by the wider public, if it is known. And so I'm looking forward to discuss his latest collection that was shown today in Paris, Autumn-Winter 19. So before starting, I would like my students to introduce themselves, and please tell your name, your studies, and your university, and whatever else you want to say.
Yes. Hi, I'm Elvis Griffin, and I am a third year studying fashion at Kingston University.
Hi, I'm Holly Bullock. I'm second year fashion journalism at the London College of Fashion, and I'm also editorial intern at SHOWstudio.
Hi, I'm Dylan Mackay. I study second year fashion design with marketing at Central St. Martin's.
And I'm Sara, and I am also studying fashion design with marketing at Central St. Martin's, but I am in my placement here.
Did you say fashion design and marketing?
Yes.
So is that a thing? Can we
study? It's like two BAs in a way. So we do both the marketing and the visual parts and the design part.
Okay, and when you say fashion, you mean design?
Yeah, fashion design.
Okay, so very interesting. A lot of people. Okay, so Noir. First thing that I would like to, well, first maybe I will say something about the designer to our audience in case someone doesn't know who Kei is. So Kei started studying literature, and then he graduated in, I think, French literature in Japan, and then he went to Antwerp and he studied fashion at the Academy of Art in Antwerp, but went back home to Tokyo one summer and applied for a job, or a summer job, at Comme des Garçons. And Ray noticed his talent and said, come here, and he became the pattern cutter at Comme des Garçons, so he never went back and didn't finish university, which I usually would tell people don't do that, but actually I think for him, that was the best thing that could happen to his career. So he worked there for 4 years, and then he launched his own brand, Noir, which by the name means black, so we can imagine what's his favorite color. He launched Noir, and he did it for a few years by living under the umbrella of Comme des Garçons, which is a group, a family, if we want to say, and then so presenting in showrooms. And then 1 year ago, spring summer 18, he did his first collection, his first show in Paris that didn't go unnoticed. It was quite extraordinary, so it was his second, and so this is his third. And of course, for him, Kei being called the protege of Rei Kawakubo, but probably, Rei is his mentor, but he's showing how much he has his own opinion on fashion and his own take that we're going to talk about in a second. He still lives under that umbrella, and he still works with Rei, and so we can see that in his in his style and in his choices, etc., etc. So first thing I would like to know from you, how much do you know about Kei? How much have you studied it? How much do people that do what you do talk about such a incredible, for me, designer? Whoever wants to start.
I think, obviously, anybody that studies fashion and is an enthusiast knows about Rei Kawakubo and Comme des Garçons. So through researching her work, her legacy, and everything that she does, I discovered him. But it was more him as the pattern cutter working for her, not necessarily him as his own entity of a designer. So it was interesting when I was asked to do this, I was forced to obviously research more, and I learned a lot more about him.
Okay.
Yeah, similar for me. Prior to this panel, I hadn't really looked into Noir Kei Ninomiya before. Obviously, I'd heard of Rei Kawakubo, fan of her work, but Noir wasn't really on my radar. So researching for this panel has been really interesting, and seeing her influence over a younger designer has been really
essential.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I knew a brief sort of history on Noir through just knowing the whole umbrella of Comme des Garçons, but when I heard about this panel, I gave more of an in-depth research about him, and learned a lot about.
So this panel was
Yes.
research. What about you?
It's quite nice to hear, except for I might be the only one that didn't know all about this brand before, but it's definitely been very interesting to look into, and I didn't know much about it at all before. It's like you said, I knew about him from Com, but not about his own thing.
So in your studies, do you, I don't know, in your interaction with your professors and tutors and mentors, do you discuss designers? Or like, I think there is this strong Japanese, you know, kind that it's very important in the history of fashion, and we can see, you know, this genre taken on and on by the new ones. Do you discuss this kind of thing? I mean, do you give importance to what's happening?
I think they do definitely give importance, but the way that at least my course is run, we have different tutors for each project, and it's very much individualized for each student. So if the tutor feels like this designer would be a good reference point or a good focal point or something that I could research to look into to better my craft, then we would talk about it and have a discussion about it. But it was very much
case by case.
Yeah, definitely.
But I find as well at St. Martin's, I don't know if you have the same experience, that they don't often talk about new designers.
No.
It's always like the old ones and, you know, the ones that we all already sort of know about, but specific collections that they'll go into and say, look at that collection that year, more so than asking about the new designers or telling you about the new designers.
Definitely.
And so during fashion weeks, do you guys look at everything or just what you're more interested in?
More interested in, because I mean, at least for
so
me,
So much.
at least for me, there's so much, and a lot of it is just banal and redundant. Like, it doesn't really come from.
It's interesting.
I don't really feel like it comes from a genuine place of truth. So most of the collections or designers that I look at, it's very specific, and I know they're showing. I go to look at them, and then I go back to doing my own thing.
I feel like with the array of brands and designers that are out there, you kind of do have to narrow down somewhat based on your personal taste, and if you can't look at everybody. So in terms of themes and kind of common thought points that you're interested in, those are the ones that you'll gravitate towards, rather than looking at broad themes. It's a more effective way of doing things.
I can feel Elvis has so much.
Well, at Kingston, I think you're expected to really go out to the shops, see what's going on in the community of like fashion, and go to Dover Street Market, Browns, etc. And if when you see your tutor, you find that they will give you designers they think might be very similar to your aesthetic, or maybe a route they think maybe you should look at, or details on a certain collection. But generally, I find it's really left to our own devices to find out about.
That's good. When I go to see the shows, the collection of like masters of university or even BA graduate collections, or sometimes I even judge them, I feel that the biggest influences come always from the same designer. So if it's menswear, there's Craig Green everywhere. If it's womenswear, it depends on, you know, the season. But now there's a lot of Simone and Molly. Yeah, I'm talking about London. I haven't been in Belgium for quite some time. But anyway, and so I wonder, and people will probably wonder why I do this, but I think we have students, so we should talk about this a little bit. But I wonder how difficult it is to get away from your passions in fashion and really create your own. Do you see what I mean?
You mean
I'm not a designer, so I don't know if I wear, because sometimes I don't think people copy, but they just strongly influence. Of course, Craig influenced because he's a huge talent.
You mean how to move away from what your favorite designers are doing and do your own thing?
Exactly. Okay. Well said.
I feel like it's another thing that's just sort of case in point. It depends on the person. For me, obviously there are select designers that I feel a close connection to, but everything in terms of aesthetic and what they do, but everything that I do is very autoethnographic. So everything, all of my work, whether it's design or performance, it comes from a place, it comes from an internal place. So
from your story,
exactly,
history
exactly.
More, yeah.
So that sort of aesthetic and those sort of visuals come naturally from a place of truth that I can't really sort of direct myself. It's just sort of where I come from, so that's what it's going to be.
That's good.
And
that's a good place
whatever designers sort of have aesthetics similar to that, it's not necessarily because I'm influenced by them. It's sort of just because we're on a similar wavelength in a sense.
Got it. Anybody else?
I think maybe due to like the golden circle of designers of Galliano, Alexander McQueen, that everyone very much focuses on that sort of area and all have those influences from those key designers. Not so much like new designers coming through, but
Oh, really?
and I guess everyone wants to try and find a new way of coming up with fashion, a new look, a new style. But I think it's important to really keep to yourself, and that is what is unique because everyone's so different. And that's the best way to really come up with something original.
Absolutely.
Yeah, in terms of how I approach things as a journalism student, it is fashion as such an aesthetic practice. It's really hard to look up objectively. You're always going to be kind of gravitate towards things that you find personally enjoyable to look at. And I guess as design students as well, that's a similar thing. You're not going to design stuff that you wouldn't want to wear yourself or see other people in.
But as a journalist, I urge you to be very careful,
Yeah, I
because
mean,
it's not about what you
Exactly.
like and what you want to wear, but what has value in the history of fashion, or what matters, or what has a meaning. you
Yeah,
know?
I agree.
And that's as hard probably as trying to design your own story and not someone else's.
Yeah, it's a discipline, definitely, that you
Yeah.
have to work at, for
Yes,
sure.
absolutely. Sarah?
Well, I think it's important to mention as well that I don't think people are necessarily, or hopefully not just looking at the clothes that like all the big designers are doing, but looking at what they researched and what were their passions, and taking inspiration out of that rather than the shirt they made from the research, because that is far more.
That's a very good point.
Because if you have the same research, I mean, you could give all of us the same research and we would hopefully and probably come out with
something
completely different designs because we have completely different styles. So I think it's more important to look at that.
And that's, sorry, did you want to add something?
I just want to say, like, I think the most important thing is, like, really go to the original sources. It's easy to look at what another designer's taken from that garment and then have a look at theirs, but really you want to go back to the original point of
yeah, like
origins.
that's what I.
Yeah.
So that's what you call the research?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. It's quite, quite reassuring what you just said. But that's why one of the reasons I wanted to discuss this is because I don't know Kei Ninomiya personally. I never met him, so I don't know. I'm just reasoning. And when I was reading about, how he grew up in Kei's shadow in a way, or school, whatever you want to call it. And when you're a pattern cutter and you're really close to the actual work, it's quite hard then. I mean, in a way, he had, it was easier for him to be displayed and sold and stocked in the Dover Street Market, which of course are what every other retailers who want to sell the new will look at. So in a way, he had that advantage. But on the other hand, is it good to be the protege of, or because when I look at what he does, of course there is an influence, but it's also very Japanese. Yeah. So it's not only race influences, but then when you study exactly what he does with the material, with the texture, with the, with the putting together different material, I think it's closer to the newness of Iris van Harpen, who almost goes into the possibility, how you can stretch the material to make them do things. And he said, I don't start from a silhouette, I start from the fabric. I start from the possibility materials gave me. So what do you think about that? I mean, is that something that interests you?
Well, just going back to the point of sort of like how Ray's influenced him and him being under her shadow, and then sort of being reborn into this new era of him doing his own thing. I feel like him being sort of nurtured and being taken under her wing was the best thing possible, because obviously Ray herself won't live forever, although she will be immortal through her work. But we don't know where her brand, where Comme des Garçons will go once she's gone. I mean, we've seen Alexander McQueen today is completely different from where it was when he was...
Completely? It's quite different, I would say.
Yeah, quite, yeah. So I feel like whether or not he will be working for Comme des Garçons once she's gone, that sort of essence and value for construction, silhouette, and everything that sort of she values, that he also values, will live on through.
Isn't she more, I mean, without taking anything away, because I have huge respect, but I think for Ray, I mean, what I notice is more the volume, the silhouette, as you said. For him,
Texture,
I mean, there is that
design.
volume that it's very much, you know, that's cool, but it's more texture and weird, surprising.
It's like a level up from,
A level forward, more than up, is, I would call it more newness, like what you were saying, I think the research of the new, the never seen, the never tested.
Creating structures like the ones in today's collection, he must have the mind of a mathematician, an engineer, as well as a designer. It's not just that creative flair, it's the mathematical process behind creating.
Very well said. Shall we go into the collection? Are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's, I think we only have stills, right? Not film. Hello? Do we have film or just stills? I didn't hear, but I guess it means just stills. Okay, so let's see the collection from look number one. We tried to have a press release, and we found out that the only sentence on the press release was rose, so roses as in the flowers. I think you will see that there are a lot of headpieces made with actual flowers. And one thing I noticed from Milan to here is that there have been so many flowers in this season. So flowers and roses are certainly a trend. So what do we see? What do you want to say? What did you notice?
I think the theme of flowers that's happening this season is really interesting, because it must be hard for designers to portray femininity without coming across as old-fashioned. I guess if you have traditionally feminine looks with heels and kind of pinks and things, people don't like that anymore, and flowers seem to be a really modern way of expressing femininity.
That's a very good point. I'd never thought about that.
I guess Hedy at Celine, when he expressed his view of femininity with kind of the short skirts and the really high heels and the glitter, that was really not well received at all.
Also, it didn't do yesterday, so but that's going to be another discussion.
But people must have been kind of scarred by that last season and have changed their minds since then about how they express.
Yeah, I saw flowers more as injecting love in a moment in history which is all about division and fear, but it's a good point. I'll think about that.
And
so yeah,
I think it's interesting his color choices in terms of flower, because obviously noir we expect to see black. It's noir, obviously.
But there's some color here.
But there's the purple, and then the only color of rose that he used was red, with the sort of deep red, wine red, burgundy-ish hair. So I think those color choices speak a lot to sort of the visuals and the feeling of what he's trying to portray.
There's another look further down that I think was, is that the last one, the burgundy? No, can we continue, please? There's another look that has like some beige or some off-white, and that was quite impressive because I've never seen anything else than black in his collection. And also I've seen before something from the back, and there's flowers down the back of a look here. I mean, this is quite extraordinary. I mean, the thing we were trying to understand the materials here. There's certainly leather and organza. There are some fluffy flower. What I call flower is the motifs in the actual garments that look like flower. At the very beginning, that we haven't discovered what they are. We said maybe tulle, or someone said fur, but someone at the show said to me, I don't think it was fur. So we're sorry, we don't know the materials, and it's very hard to decide in a photograph, but I think the construction is quite outstanding.
Isn't that what makes a good collection as well? When people, because we're all sitting here wondering what's it made of, how did he make that, what's in it, and what's the thought behind it, and
spark of curiosity.
Yeah, it's just that I would like to be able to give all the information I have, but that's all I can say.
But definitely the way he uses those materials completely transforms them into something unrecognizable, which is really interesting.
Everything he does, this collection and all of his collections prior, you can say that he does everything with purpose and with intentionality, which I think really comes through with how he presents himself, because everything is so considered from head to toe and how it's constructed and the materials that are used. There's no sort of space that doesn't necessarily have some sort of meaning or feeling that was pushed behind it. And I think it's interesting that there's so much thought put into the collection, and then the press releases rose.
But
There is probably a lot of thought behind that.
Of course.
That point.
Yeah.
Which is the headpieces, yeah. One thing I read about him is that he favored not to stitch, because by weaving or bonding, he creates volumes. So again, he starts from the materials and then he finds solution to create volumes.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting when in all black you can really see the texture of the fabric and the craftsmanship that really goes into each piece. And I'd love to see some like block colors, because sometimes when the colors are mixed, and I really do like the addition of colors in the collection, but when they're a block color you can really see the detail of the textures or the fabrics.
Yeah, that's what he says. I work with 50, or no, he didn't say 50, but whatever, shades of black.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you see the different blacks within the different materials.
Yeah, and I think colour would just distract from, because he really focuses on craftsmanship and artisanship and pays so much attention to detail with his construction, and colour would distract from that.
Definitely.
Or-
I feel like
I think block colors would look really interesting though, like a
Even if it were
full
red or
even if it was
yellow.
red, pink, white. I think it'd be really interesting to see how that would affect all the textures and how that would come across in a style.
Well, he's obviously interested, as you said, in block coloring, monochrome, and craftsmanship, handcraft. I mean, you know what I mean? So what you said is very true, and then his choice is noir, his choice is black, and that's very Japanese, and that's very fashion, and that's probably what he likes. But I see here he's like pushing himself in. There's some looks that have burgundy or purple underneath the black. Did you notice? And that's
And then this kind of metallic purple, is it jacquard? Like that, the top with that corset. That's really unusual, because he's only previously used black, red and white.
yeah, I've never seen this much color in one of his collection, if we can say. It's very beautiful. The hair and makeup is extraordinary.
Incredible. And I love the makeup that has that very almost Mad Max feel to it as well.
The eye mask.
Yeah, the black eye mask with the leather jackets as well brings off.
Do we have details of makeup in some Instagram posts? No. Yeah, it would be nice to see others.
it's so much harder to design in black and white solely, because you can't hide behind pattern or color. So I think that's also a huge part of why he does what he does, because the construction and the silhouette is the main part. So he doesn't want to hide, he doesn't want to distract with any of that. He just wants it to be what it is, with
Very
the black or white.
Radically confident in his own craft.
So confident. That was my next point, I think. Of course, he's not a young designer in the sense that he just started 1 year ago. I mean, he's been studying first another thing, and then fashion, and then work. So he's a mature man, but the maturity of those shows are quite incredible for someone who has shown for the third time, and there is a strong point of view. But I'm interested in what you were saying, not distracting, and yet, I mean, I think those headpieces and that makeup is quite noticeable. I don't know how to say. It's quite striking.
It's the first
It's a
time.
highlight in it.
It's the first time that he's done something so outlandish in terms of makeup and styling, other than before when he had the headpieces.
I mean, the
drifted
white
by.
headpieces last season were quite distracting.
but that was part of the performative aspect. That was part of the feeling of the whole thing. But
It was
this is-
contrasting also with the hardness almost of that black armor with that fluffy. Wow, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, I might be hanged for saying this, but with all the, because we're all talking about how well made it is and with all the quality, and I do think that all the textures are beautiful and well made, but if you look into the details of, for example, you have like the biker jacket details and the belts and I don't think that those parts are that well made, and I wish they were. I wish they were perfect.
So what's wrong with it for you? Because the biker is one of his signature.
Yeah.
what
I find that
I'm
like if
interested
you
in
zoom in on that, for example, you can see that the seams are pulling, and it almost kind of looks like it would be fake leather that has been pulling, and maybe that is what he wants. But it would be nice. So. It would be nice to have that perfectly made things next to all these beautiful messy textures and everything. That's something that I would find really, really interesting and beautiful.
That's interesting. What do the other think?
Is that can you zoom in on that jacket, please?
The photos don't do it any justice.
No.
But if it's a photo of something going on the catwalk, you can still see details that aren't.
Yeah.
I do not think they're by mistake, but.
Is that a top that's underneath the jacket, or is it like some sort of gradient of material that he's created?
I think the jacket is separate. I think it's underneath.
Because there's more biker jackets that are even more sort of classic bikers.
Yeah, to me those jackets add the kind of messy punk element. The floral structures are the really kind of pristine,
decadent,
pristine, neat bit.
I love that one is that one is quite perfectly made with all the.
And that's really his signature. I mean, the biker that adds this punkish, you know, not look, but feel more than look to what he does. It's one of his signature, you know. Not
do you also not feel like, because you said that you think it's intentional, and I'm sure it is, but do you not feel that if it's supposed to be, I don't want to say badly made, but messy made, shouldn't that be so intentional that there's no way of questioning it?
Well, I hear you, and I must admit that I didn't notice or think like that also because I'm not a designer.
Yeah, there might just be maybe OCD, but I am very OCD.
It doesn't disturb me because I don't crave perfection in the make of anything.
Oh no, me neither, but there is sort of a way of doing, for example, like I said, if you had the beautiful leather details that are really smooth and then you have all these crazy things going on, that would be.
I think you would just rather it be like so obviously one or the other, not.
Yeah. I don't want it to be in the middle.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I can do it better, but you know.
No, it's very interesting, and it's very interesting to hear your opinion on this. You know, I can't really step in and have a strong opinion in this, I admit. You know, it's not something I thought about and I can't see it close enough, you know. But one other thing I wanted, and then we can go back to the details of this, and maybe see something in movement. But this morning I spent some time going into e-tailers to see what actually then goes into store. And it's very pretty and it's very desirable, but nothing to do with what's here, which is a little bit what Comme des Garçons do because it's very hard to sell. But when you see this, for me, this is what makes me want and go on Net-a-Porter, Farfetch, Dover Street Market and see what they actually sell and buy that white shirt, which, by the way, is perfect. And which, by the way, is not as expensive as other brands. I mean, it's still luxury, but it's not crazy. I mean, a dress is £700. I mean, depending which dress. But it's quite interesting to see you recognize the thing, but it's very different what then you can actually buy.
I feel like...
Wow, exactly.
It's insane. But I feel like...
Look at the flowers on the hair.
I do love the flowers and the makeup, but it sort of draws my focus away from the clothes and more towards the styling of it.
I feel like with catwalks, which is essentially a performance, it's more about the feeling and sort of the message that the designer's trying to get across. And like what you're saying, in stores, they don't necessarily have these pieces. They're more like versions of, or like a shirt.
Yeah.
It's almost as if with designers like Ninomiya, with designers like Ray, with designers like Rick Owens, they have these incredible performative catwalk experiences that really sort of take you out of reality and bring you into this world that they're creating around their creation.
To create the dream.
Yeah, to create a dream. And then so when you go into the store and you really want to buy a shirt that might not be what you saw on the catwalk,
but it brings you into that
tribe. It feels like you're buying into that experience.
Yeah, but yet there are a few pieces, and now whatever I'm saying, I can't say that one. But there are a few pieces that I think would be a little bit more daring than just the black biker or the white shirt or the black trousers, but still sellable, because I think today people are much more, look at you guys, I mean, are much more daring in what they wear than, you know, than even 10 years ago or 5 years ago. So I don't know, I should probably go to Dover Street Market physical and see what they have, but online I didn't find anything particularly exciting. Then when you look at this show.
I think some of the more performative pieces are really exciting because we're looking at fashion more than just clothes, more as art and as something to be looked at and admired rather than to be just worn and consumed. It's more than just the clothes that people wear in this case. It's not
like
to be
art?
bought. Yeah, exactly. Which it should be treated as that because it's exactly the same discipline creativity-wise.
So why isn't this couture? I mean, I don't think that it takes fewer hours than making one of those couture gowns where we read like 390 hours to do it or whatever, you know, 1,000 flowers stitched hand by hand. It's like, look at this. It's like incredible.
It's a performance in itself.
Fully.
Yeah, I wish we could have some sound. But,
yeah, that's another thing. I'm really interested in hearing what music was paired with it and sort of better quality videos with the lighting, because that all comes into play when sort of
immerses you in the story. And
I think seeing the pieces in movement as well, though, on just the catwalk images, it's really easy to see the pieces as really severe, but actually when you see them in movement, they're very soft, and the materials really come across.
What do you mean by severe?
Severe.
Very
harsh. They look
like
quite
in your face.
Yeah, and the materials look on the images quite plasticky. Some can look like metal, but actually when you see them moving, they're really soft.
Yeah. I really need to know what that is. I really need to know what is it.
I'm super curious about what that is as well.
Is it silk? I don't know. That's a beautiful armor on top of it.
Oh my God.
It's extraordinary. I mean,
I also think it's really, really beautiful and interesting. I was saying before, like, I'm not necessarily that interested in many of the things that are coming out from different houses because everything is just repeated over and over and over again. It feels banal, it feels redundant. But with what he does, it's incredible because he has this sort of code of the things that really make
fashion
the foundation of what he does. So like the biker jackets, the origami folding, the grids, the sort of armor. And he does that every single season, but he sets rules and he breaks his own rules, and then he sort of rebirths it and reconstructs it in a completely different way every single time. I think it's
really inspiring to see such strong house codes as well. And he was really brave to stick with them. It must have been such a scary move to announce to the world in your brand name that you'll be focusing on black.
Just period.
Yeah.
That's a strong statement. I have a feeling that there's some thought coming out.
No, I'd just love to see some of these, the textiles on some of these like really big pieces make it into some of the more jacket sizes.
So more wearable.
Yeah, because everything that seems to be more pushed to be more of a wearable item, it seems to be a very smooth leather, where I'd love to see some of this textile coming onto those sort of shorter wearable jackets.
Maybe there will be in the editing collection for retail.
Yeah.
I want to go back to something that you were saying about, especially you, Dylan, right? Yeah, Dylan. Especially you about you're interested in this kind of fashion because most of the rest is just clothes that we've seen and reseen and reseen. But, and this is a provocation for the discussion, is this kind of fashion, and I'm not placing judgment with fortunately or unfortunately, but it's never becoming the big houses that make the big millions and that are known. I mean, if you go out in the street and say noir, like, probably nobody in certain areas and a few in certain areas, but you say Chanel, Gucci, Prada, you see what I mean? And so I wonder, is there the possibility to find a balance while having things that are so exciting, not only for us people in the industry, but for civilians, and yet they're not only a cashmere sweater? Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
What's the solution?
Well, at the moment, I think everyone seems to be very invested into brands more than a designer. So people go to Gucci, not
So people, you mean the buyers, the consumers?
Yeah, the buyers, the consumers, I think go to Gucci for the name and not so much who's there designing.
Yeah.
Why?
I think it's everyone wants to be part of a tribe almost, like a group of people who have a like-minded sense, and I guess it's easier to get that to come across in a brand than a designer in name, because we can all appreciate Alexander McQueen, but it's hard to sort of generalize that as a tribe of people who wear that, those pieces.
If someone's walking down the street wearing a Noir jacket next to someone that's wearing a Gucci jacket that says Gucci on the back, the person that's wearing the Gucci one probably bought that not necessarily because he wants to buy into the brand, he wants to buy into this garment that he's
The
really
belonging,
in love with,
yeah,
the belonging.
the aspirational.
It's just the name.
It's funny what you say, because probably, we're not the right person to discuss this because we stand more, but when you see one of the well-made leather, soft black leather bikers by Noir, I mean, there's no, if it costs the same money as someone whose expertise is more into shoes or bags, without taking anything away from that, but it's very hard to compare. I mean, it's so 10 times better, and yet,
But the way
well, we five would buy the Noir one, and you know what I mean? And that's it.
We had the money too, yeah.
Yes, if money weren't an option, an obstacle, but it's how, I mean, does it even matter that we try to teach the world that this is so important?
I think it's honestly just a sense of consciousness and validity in who you are as a person, and just sort of like a grounding foundation in the sense of like, I know who I am, I know what I like, and I don't care whether or not people see me and know that I'm wearing this brand and spent this much money on this brand. I'm buying into this brand because I'm interested in the designer, I'm interested in the craftsmanship. It goes along with my aesthetic and what I am as a person and who I am as a person. So it's not thinking about anything that's going on outside other than who you are and what you feel.
I feel like when you're investing into someone like Noir, you're very invested into the person. And you know about them, and you've done your research, and it is very personal. Yeah, you respect the craft and the work that's gone into it. Where when you buy into more of a brand, it's more about a sort of a statement piece to everyone else. Where buying something like Noir, it's not so much a statement piece to everyone else, but something very personal to you.
I don't get the impression that he's chasing that kind of commercial success based on the way he positions himself. I think he quite likes being the outsider that only fashion people know about or care about.
Yes, yet if you don't sell anything, you don't exist.
Yes.
Yeah.
So again, you know, and I'm saying this every
I
time.
think it's finding that perfect balance between the brand and your name, really.
But that's why for him it's essential and also important to be in the umbrella of Comme des Garçons that created Dover Street Market, which was a genius idea to, you know, give to a bigger audience Ray's work as well, because with all, you know, it's obviously...
And obviously Comme des Garçons sells not only the more diluted brands like Play with the shirts and the shoes, but like the actual garments that you see on the runway. I see many people around London, whether they're at art uni or teaching, many people wear the actual pieces because they're buying into that experience. And I think the same people that buy into that experience will buy into Noir. And the same thing with a designer like Rick Owens that does have more wearable pieces and his more sculptural pieces. It's this whole cult, this whole...
Rick Owens has a tribe. Rick Owens has had a tribe.
It's an obsession. You have to be fully obsessed.
Yeah, there are people that practically only wear Rick Owens, but there are other people like me and you probably in a few years that have one of those, you know, pieces that are amazing. So this is newer and younger and probably...
But I think in a few years, once he's more established and once people really get into that obsession, it's going to become that quite easily.
But then,
Find his tribe.
But then hopefully they will sell that biker online as well.
Well, I find that there is a change in fashion as well going on that has been going on for a lot of years, but it's sort of like snowballing towards the positive, that people are spending more money on singular pieces and more about, because we've all been talking about aesthetics now, but it's also about the values behind, like we were talking about before we went on and did this about sustainability.
Yeah, let's go
coming into that.
Well
I want to talk about that now. No, but I think it's definitely people are buying into what's behind the brand or the names even, because I think also people are buying more small designers, and which is hopeful for us obviously, because we're going to go out and be there.
Small designers. Yeah.
And I think it's also a reflection of what society is a little bit like today, with no distinct youth culture at the moment. There is no one look, like when Vivienne Westwood started, there was the punks who were really distinct.
Yeah.
These days, with globalism, I feel like you can communicate with anyone in the world, and you find those people who might not even live in London or the same city or the same country. So everyone, I feel, is looking for more of a personal piece than being
That's a
part
good
of
thing,
youth
though.
culture. Yeah.
It's more independent, or you know.
And more creative, because more people go into different looks, different styles than just that one look that's very trendy at the moment.
Well, it's also, we live in it's amazing time to be alive, because regardless of what's happening politically in the world, I feel that there is such a big movement with the queer movement, and it's so much more open with what you wear, and
Free.
Yeah, it's freer, definitely, and it's beautiful to see.
Social media has completely changed the game of the world of fashion as well, and also
I can
the
tell
world
you, I
in
was there
general.
before, so it has changed the game a lot.
Yeah, but it's really interesting in some ways. Social media has completely eradicated youth culture, and in other ways it's opened new avenues. It seems like Noir Ninomiya his tribe is yet to be found, but when it does, there'll be an understanding between them all of his aesthetic and his values. And I think, as you were saying about incorporating some of those more interesting textures into the more wearable pieces would be a really good idea, because at the moment, those more wearable pieces aren't particularly distinctive. And I think if they had some kind of detailing that was typically Ninomiya,
Definitely.
it would be an exciting addition.
I feel like there's showpieces which are, your big volume, really special pieces, and then there is the more wearable stuff, and it's always a little bit disappointing to see with catwalk shows and different designers how pulled back just to sell an item who they think could be an easy sell.
Yeah.
And it sort of loses that identity of that collection and that catwalk show that they've built so much around, and all of a sudden you've just got, just for example, not Noir,
but you do also need that money to be able to do these pieces. So it's that kind of thing.
When in actuality, I feel like more people would buy into it if there was that sort of a semblance of the performative aspect in the catwalk taken into, say, the biker jacket. I feel like more people
agree
would
with
buy
you.
it.
That's a little bit where I was going, because without going to the extreme, of something that, you need some guts to show up with this, but a little bit more, because I think Ninomiya has a tribe, and that's the Japanese, or not Japanese, the international crowd that love that, from Yoji to Ray, noir fashion, and that, it's very conceptual. This is what I call conceptual fashion, and the Japanese are the masters of that. So there is a tribe which is obviously smaller than the Gucci tribe, of course, for obvious reasons, but there is, and then I thought it a little bit disappointing. It's not his fault, it's probably the fault of the buyers, or I don't know, but I thought it was like, it's not the same brand,
Yeah, I think the risk-taking from buyers is very low. I think everyone's so worried about sales, and it might just be a reality of the industry, but I think people are definitely a lot more braver today than they
Yeah.
were
Definitely.
to try new things.
I mean,
Luckily, I don't know if we're seeing this, but he has Dover Street Market that
Yeah.
can show everything.
Support.
But if you
I mean-
go
More experimental,
on
yeah.
Farfetch or Net-a-Porter, that's not what you see.
take Molly Goddard, for example.
Yeah.
Like her catwalk shows, she has these massive, just larger-than-life gowns with layers and layers and layers of tulle.
And you can see in Dover Street Market, they're very good at
Yeah.
always having at least one.
Definitely. And also, rather than having maybe like a t-shirt with the print of the tulle on it, she has a more scaled down version that's a small little bit of ruffle, but it still has some sort of connection to the performative aspect of the show.
Yes.
Yeah,
But
she
Molly,
really
sorry,
does
go
a
ahead.
really good job at incorporating
She
the
said
two
that
sides of her
she
brand.
sells
It's
it
not so much that
completely.
you look at the collection and you know exactly what will sell and what
She
won't.
said
You
that we'll
can't
always
divide it
do
up
a
that much.
showpiece to attract attention, and honestly, you can always see it in Dover Street Market,
Yeah.
real life, which is amazing. You wanted to ask for something?
No, I just wanted to see what
This
is on
what
the
you
shop.
find. This is what you find on, I don't know which one it is, but
Can we see that biker jacket closer though?
You want
The
to
one with the
inspect the
texture.
biker
No, no, no. I just want to see because there's textures on the arms. So I want to see if that's actually something that relates to the show.
That was
Hard
one of
to
his
see on-
previous
see on-
collections. They had the wavy
Yeah, I remember
textures
that
with
one.
the
Yeah.
pearls.
yeah, that's that last collection.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not easy, you know. It's not easy also for a retailer to decide how to. They really hope that probably what you see in the shows and what people like us say will attract attention. But it's very hard then to say, why would I buy that white shirt or instead of another? So
I think as the brand builds a following, buyers will start to take more risks because they know he has fans.
Definitely.
So with more collections and more seasons and more media attention,
yeah, well, thank God for the institution like DSM.
Oh, yeah.
that helped that.
I don't think that applies just to noir. I think it's
No.
a general thing
Yeah.
in the industry
Yeah.
that it is like that.
But here is particularly striking
Yeah.
when you see what we saw. And also, you know that he was one of the participants in the Moncler Genius last season, and it's not anymore this one, if I'm not.
no, no,
I
not
think
this
I'm
time.
It
no,
was
it's
just
not.
last year.
And there, I would like to know why. Who was the decision of Moncler people,
Yeah.
or it's very interesting. I mean, he's a little bit of an enigma for me. I haven't read many interviews. I've read what he thinks
No,
about.
I think he's
monochrome and
he's
how-
very concise with what he says, even over email or through live interview.
Well, the press release.
The press
one
release,
word.
exactly. But I feel like that's also sort of a statement as to where he feels his aesthetic is and the brand is. I feel like the amount of performative aspects that he's producing and the volume of what he does, just in terms of how it's perceived going from designer to public, I feel like the performance isn't finished or the collection isn't finished until the buyer or the viewer or the fan that's
Yeah,
obsessed
very
with
true.
it puts in his own input. And I feel like if he did give too much information, whether it's on the press release or in an interview, people wouldn't
The magic.
want to, exactly. You put in your own take, which makes you, which is what makes you obsessed with it, because you don't really know. You're
Yeah.
putting your own ideas
That's
into
something that Rick
collection.
Owen said once. I heard him saying before a show. He said, "Let's not kill the magic. You know, just go in, feel whatever you want to feel, and then if you want to explain, but what you feel about that matters as much as the actual reality. You know. So, are we positive?
Yes, I was just. We're just looking through here now. I'm loving some of the silhouettes and the different shapes and different places he's placed all the silhouettes on the body.
Yeah, the one above
think-
that was kind of like
yeah.
a cage around the arms. That was really
I
interesting.
think he's nailed it on the silhouette portions and how each garment seems to be a bit different on the silhouette as well.
Yeah, I hope that some of the skirts that we just seen that are absolutely wearable will end up in some retailer.
It's
I mean-
interesting.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, it's interesting. It's always interesting, not just with him, but with everybody's collection, to see how it's organized in terms of the show. from
You mean the
beginning to
lineup
the
or the
lineup.
styling?
Well, styling, but more so lineup.
What do you want to
Because
say about that?
a lot of the pieces are either straight up and down or have some sort of bulbous shape at the top or the bottom. And it's almost as if it's like a zigzag gradient going from the beginning to the end of the show. It sort of starts off big, goes into small, big bottom.
That's very smart.
Keeps it interesting,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
yeah. And I think
It's a very, I mean, that's also, you know, a show is not just to send out stuff. Whatever happens, you know, that's very important to do. So you create a narrative,
story,
you create a story, yeah.
And I think it's done beautifully here, especially with the styling. I think the styling's amazing.
Well, panel, you've been amazing. One of the best student panel, I must say, on one of the best collection I think we've seen this season. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations and good luck for your future as designers or journalists.
Thank you.
So don't forget to subscribe to SHOWstudio channel on YouTube, and please do leave your comments. We'd love to hear from you. Another 2 panels before the end of the season. Stay tuned. Bye-bye.